What's up, guys, and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today, we're interviewing Claudia Lotti and Emily Ledford. Claudia and Emily are both personal trainers focused on women over 40. We are discussing myths and misconceptions around menopause, body composition changes during that time, as well as some common mistakes they see women make, and one of our favorite topics, the importance of building muscle. Of course, we are also talking about how the industry can improve. Big thanks to Emily and Claudia for coming on our show. You can find them on Instagram at EmilyLedfordFit_nutrition and at ClaudiaLotti.co. We'll have both of those linked into the description below. This episode is part of our Professional Spotlight series, where we're dedicating some episodes to pros that are adding value and trying to make a difference by focusing on topics that they are passionate about and the information that they want to put out there. For those of you that don't already know, our website, Level Health, is a directory, community, and network of qualified health and fitness professionals. We want to help create a space where clients and patients are able to find the right professional for them. We have accounts for both clients and professionals. Client accounts are always free, and we have 2 different membership levels for pros. If you haven't signed up already, head over to levelhealth.net and set up your membership. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode.
But can you just start by each of you giving us some background on who you are and why you do what you do?
You want to go first, Emily?
Okay, sure. Who am I? I'm Emily and Ledford, and I'm in Virginia. I train women online and in person. I have a Russian Kettlebell certification level 2, if anyone's familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's tough, isn't it?
It's kind of brutal. So every 3 years, I think we have to recertify, and it's just like, oh my gosh, how long can I keep this up? But I'm gonna keep going. And then also precision nutrition certified, like Claudia as well. So
now, RKC, what led you to kettlebells? Because I don't think that kettlebells are where people start ever. I think it's a love-hate relationship always for me with kettlebells.
Yes. Okay. So I was a kind of a new mom, and I think my first look into kettlebells was from 2 people. Nagar, how do you say her last name? Fanuni. She's going to kill me if I say it wrong. Fanuni or something. I don't know. And then Marianne Kane. Both were kettlebell people that I looked up to. And I just thought, wow, that looks bad to the bone. I want to be bad to the bone. So it just kind of led me in that direction. And then when I moved to Virginia, I got a trainer who taught me everything I would need to know to go through the certification myself, because it's just like a passion. So that's kind of where that started.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit crazy to get around kettlebells. The RKC is something that I've had my eye on for a long time. And it's, how long do you think you need to prep for that? How long did you take to prep for it?
It took me 4 months alone to learn how to snatch a kettlebell properly. And that's like a big deal. 4 months of training one-on-one with a coach. I thought I would never get it. I mean, I just but it took me 4 months. I had already been strength training before that. Even dabbled into things like P90X when I first began as a really young mom. So I was familiar with it. I'd kind of always been into it, but I just loved kettlebells. So yeah, but a good 4 months just to learn to snatch. I don't know if it takes everybody that long, but it was so technical. I didn't even realize it.
The other huge benefit, so working with clients, they were touching kettlebells every single day, because for one reason, they're just phenomenal in terms of how they load, but also nobody uses kettlebells. So you always knew that there were some kettlebells open across the gym if you needed it. So that's funny. I'm glad we talked about kettlebells right out the gate, because they're my favorite. All right, Claudia.
All right, my name is Claudia Lotti. I am a certified nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. I was a dental hygienist for 20 years, but I started my Precision Nutrition certification before the pandemic. And then when lockdown happened, I just decided to go all in on it. So I'm pretty new at coaching. I've been doing it for about a year. But what led me to it was my own struggles. When I was younger, I think that leads a lot of people into, the fitness, the field of fitness, and nutrition. But I grew up around a lot of like dieting behavior and weight talk and things like that. So as a young person, I developed binge eating. It wasn't diagnosed as binge eating disorder, but I developed binge eating behaviors, and I ended up becoming obese like in my teens, and just started. And in my early 20s, I just started mindful eating, and it wasn't something that I actually read about or heard about. It was just something that I started doing. I just started paying attention to my portions and paying attention to my hunger signals, and I lost a significant amount of weight, and then I switched to like tracking and counting calories and lost even more. I lost about 60 pounds altogether, and but after that, it wasn't always like a smooth and easy road. There was a lot of ups and downs and struggles with my eating behavior, a lot of restriction and things like that. And it's just something, it always fascinated me, I guess the behavioral aspects of why we do what we do. And it's just been something that I've been reading about and just learning about for such a long time. And I finally decided to just get certified as a coach and hopefully help some people out. And I also realized that, just because I went through a certain journey doesn't mean that I know everything. I realized that, everybody's situation is different. But I did learn a lot along the way, a lot of what not to do,
I think that's so incredibly valuable. But I believe that you, even though you said you're just starting out, I think that you're well ahead of most people with just that, having that mindset of I don't know everything is so incredibly valuable, and being able to admit that as well is incredibly valuable. And on that note, I wanted to talk about some paradigm shattering moments that y'all have had. However, first I wanted to ask you, was there any support for people experiencing these kind of disordered eating patterns back then when you had the actual binge eating problem?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, the internet wasn't even a thing. So I just thought I had no idea that the reason why I was binging was because I was restricting, because I started trying to restrict my food intake, as a child. I thought that's just what you did. You dieted, because I saw other people doing it. So I just assumed that I needed to do it too. And at the time, I wasn't even overweight, but it led to binge eating behaviors that led me to believe that I had no control around food. And I didn't know that restriction was causing the binging. I just thought I had no control around food, and that went on for a long time. But no, I mean, there was no help. I didn't even know what, I don't even think anyone even talked about binge eating back then or anything.
I mean, that wasn't that long ago. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, so it makes sense that we're still kind of emerging from that state where there just wasn't any of that support. And I wonder how long it's going to take before, I mean, social media is doing a great job. I mean, people, even just like yourselves, are out there putting out good information. So in some ways, social media is pushing us forward. In other ways, it's pushing, like, I wonder if it's just neutral at this point, like, because there are people putting out good stuff, but there's also the people that are feeding into these disorders. So that's interesting. I wonder, I guess all we can do is wait another 5-10 years and see what happens, and kind of try to do our best along the way to not make things worse. But before we really hone in on the main topic today, which is perimenopause and everything that comes with it, can y'all just give us a few examples of when your paradigms were shattered and big frame shifts in terms of like just eye-opening moments?
I mean, I think there's been a paradigm shift recently for me in the past year or two when it comes to like weight stigma and more intuitive and mindful eating practices.
I think that that's probably from the same people that you were able to kind of see things a little bit more clearly. I would completely agree with that in terms of that happened to me as well. And I look at every step along the way of my fitness career, and it's just like getting a little bit less wrong, getting a little bit better along the way. Emily, do you have one off the top of your head?
Yes, I was anorexic in high school. It started about 8th grade, towards the end of 8th grade. And I stopped eating because I wanted to lose weight. And like Claudia, I'd grown up thinking, there's diets all around my house, like on pieces of paper my mom would have intertwined with the cookbooks, like, okay, the bread diet, what was that? So I would see all of these things. And then I guess I just started having a really bad body image as a shy kid in high school. So I completely just pretty much stopped eating. But one can only do that so long, right? I did get like outpatient treatment for a little bit, and then it turned into bulimia. So because, once you've restricted for so long, you like go over the line and you're like, I can't stop eating because like it feels so good to eat again. So then I did that for several years, and then it turned into binge eating and not purging, maybe over exercising instead, maybe like not purging through exercise instead. And then it just, all these shifts, somebody's telling you it's good to eat, but you can't find that moderation. You're either all on or all off. And that's where it was really difficult for me to bring it together. And it took years. It took years of counseling and just practice and failing to find a way that I could not be at either extreme, and just to be okay and maybe gain a little bit more weight, but not be binging and not be restricting. So for me, that, when I had kids, I really got involved in helping other people. I had like a little Facebook group that was free. I wasn't even a trainer. I was just like, here, I'm just giving out kind of healthy advice for anyone who's needs help, for dieting or anything. And that's kind of where I just really found like, wow, I'm really passionate about helping these people learn how to exercise and to eat healthy. So, yeah.
Excellent. That was very, yeah. I don't think that there's always this big moment like that, or where it's just all of a sudden everything's completely different. But yeah, these changes definitely occur over time. So moving on to something that I think y'all probably have to do quite a bit, squashing myths. And I thought that we could probably just start with this, because who knows where this initial part of the conversation will go, and then I'll ask more questions. However, can you guys start out with just naming off, I'm sure there's a bunch of just myths and misconceptions about perimenopause, what you can expect, what is to be expected, what's normal, everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think it's inevitable, and it is common, but it's not necessarily inevitable. There are added challenges during this time, but it's definitely not something that weight, like our hormones aren't like directly related to the weight gain. They kind of, like, it's sort of the side, like the other effects, the other things that affect our hormones, like the fact that we're going through insomnia, mood swings, anxiety, things like that. The fact that we have a reduction in EAT, typically as we get older, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, we're moving around less, things like that, can cause the pounds to creep up. But I think a lot of the myths that we see are, a lot of people think that they're really attracted to fad diets. I feel like at this phase in life, intermittent fasting is one that I've been hearing a lot about, and also keto. And a lot of people I've noticed in like some of the Facebook groups I'm in, I kind of just hang out in there to see what's going on. And I'm seeing a lot of people talking about doing keto and intermittent fasting at the same time. Like, that's the way to lose weight in menopause. So
what are they attributing that to? I don't want to go into that, spend too much time on the keto and intermittent fasting, because I think we all have a similar appreciation for that. Let's just say, how what is some of the reasons that they're telling people that these diets are these fad diets, let's just focus on fasting and keto. Insulin, they're just putting out they're just throwing out buzzwords.
Yeah, insulin, it's because of insulin.
Yeah, and that's usually where they end, right?
Yeah.
And that's not even necessarily specific to, let's just say, lay people Facebook groups. I think that that's pretty common in terms of people that are trying to sell things as well, because they take a bit of information and they try to just expand that. And, yes, you will have reduced insulin on a ketogenic diet, but does that result in net reduction in body fat? Probably not.
What else do we see, Emily?
Well, people tend to get more stressed and deal with stress. We talked about drinking more alcohol as they get older and wanting to take the edge off of their stress that way. Just a lot of stress and emotional eating too. I think when you're older, I don't know why, maybe just tired and just more sedentary, and you get bored, and then you just start, eating. I deal with people all the time, like they're trying to get out of that habit of eating at night, and they're, the TV's on, they're sitting on the couch, and that's just, they eat, and it's mindless eating. So of course we can consume a lot more calories than we need if we're just doing some mindless eating like that. But yeah, tend to be just more sedentary in general.
You touched on it again. So my next question there was, what role do you see a lack of activity throughout the day play? Because like I said earlier, I worked with a lot of women in this age group, and a common theme that I did see was inactivity. And with that comes just a requirement for reduced calories if they're going to want to lose weight. But at some point you say, okay, we're not going to go any lower. It's not safe necessarily long-term to do this. What role and how are you able to convince people that moving throughout the day is important?
Just educating them on the fact that NEAT is a major contributor to our metabolism, and that the activity that we do in the gym, burns some calories, but it really accounts for very little of our, total daily energy expenditure. Unless we're doing like hours and hours and hours in the gym, which hopefully we're not, just trying to get them more aware of their movement and just try to increase it, slowly.
I have found that that's still, it's still not fully understood, or I would probably say appreciated by a lot of people, because again, coming down to the basics of just some sort of nutritional strategy, an effective nutritional strategy, and a little bit of movement and lifting weights. But if you are not moving throughout the day, like again, and we can even talk about it from not even from a weight loss perspective, just from a general health perspective. So that's very interesting that that continues to pop up time and time again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, what I see a lot of people saying is that, well, I'm exercising more than ever. Like I never used to go to the gym before, and now I go to the gym 4 days a week. And I think they think that is what activity is, and they're not really understanding that those couple hours in the gym really, they're great for building muscle or for, obtaining cardiovascular health. But as far as burning calories or, helping to contribute to weight loss, it's probably not really that beneficial. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, and a lot of people will also say they work out so hard, so that's their free pass to be okay with sitting for the rest of the day and not doing much else. So then it's like it's counterproductive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say that was actually another eye opener for me, was that I didn't have to go to the gym. Exercise isn't something that has to take place inside of a gym. And that's been something that, I've known for a long time, but I've only been able to actually put into practice relatively recently. All right, that was awesome. So the next, I did have quite a few more questions based off of that, but in order to save some time, I wanted to move on to the next one. What are some body composition changes that are expected during perimenopause and just menopause? Although I would be a little bit more specific. We know that adding body fat is going to be one of those things, but I don't think that, because things like loss in bone mineral density and obviously loss in muscle mass are a little bit more insidious, I think that people aren't necessarily aware of those as much.
Yeah. When our estrogen drops, we talked before we started recording the podcast, when our estrogen drops, muscle loss, like the rate of muscle loss is accelerated. So it's not uncommon to have a change in body composition and have more body fat and less muscle. And then also due to the drop in estrogen, and I believe it's the ratio then of testosterone to estrogen, you know, that contributes to more visceral fat, more fat around the midsection. So women will start to notice that, you know, they go from, you know, not most women, but well, I would say most women when they're younger store a lot of their fat in their hips and their thighs. And as we age, we tend to store more fat in our midsection and less in our hips and our thighs. So if we do gain 5 to 10 pounds, it tends to just be like right in our midsection, which, a lot of women find to be displeasing from an aesthetic standpoint, but then also you got to think about the health ramifications of visceral fat also. So
yeah, it goes much more deep than just the aesthetic component.
yes.
Can we talk about the importance of building muscle in women, specifically specifically within this age group? But I think that you could probably touch on women in general.
Building muscle is about the best thing you can do for a sturdy and powerful metabolism. It's not going to get any easier getting older without strength training. You're either going to have more body fat or more muscle. And of course, muscle is going to give you a leaner appearance. It's just going to help your weight be more stable. It'll help you not fluctuate all the time. You can truly get away with more in your diet when you do have muscle. You're not going to gain, 5 pounds overnight. You know what I mean? I mean, we could all gain fluid, but what I'm saying is just that overall for the extended period of time, your weight will be far more stable if you carry more muscle than fat. So I am all for it. I'm always trying to teach women that's the best thing. Even my 60-year-old clients are trying to build muscle because they know weight loss is not going to get any easier. So it's just the best thing that you can do for that metabolism.
Yeah. And I just think as we enter into perimenopause and menopause, the fact that, we're already behind the 8 ball hormonally, as our estrogen drops off, we're going to start to lose muscle if we don't do something to preserve it. And it's important, not only from a metabolic standpoint, but also from a functional standpoint, being able to actually function as we get older. Because if we just continue to lose muscle as we age and it starts to accelerate in our 40s and 50s, that can really have a big impact on our activity, what we can, how we can participate in life, the things that we can do, just everyday things like gardening, playing with your grandkids, going on a hike, all kinds of things. And then just it increases, if you do have, if you are experiencing muscle loss and sarcopenia, you're at increased risk for injury. And then also strength training, for women, osteoporosis is a really big deal. And that's another thing that during, like after menopause, osteoporosis, the rate of bone loss really is accelerated. And I read a statistic, it is in the 5 to 7 years after menopause, women can lose up to 20% of their bone density. So strength training is going to help preserve bone, bone quality. And then,
it directly stimulates that calcium, that mineralization of the bones. Like and I'm sure you've probably had a similar thought along these lines, but it's almost criminal that physicians aren't prescribing resistance training first and foremost. It's a direct signal to stimulate bone growth. And you're right. We all, as we're aging, our bones are becoming much more porous. And if we're not sending that signal into it to solidify it, then you're going to just be going in one direction. I'm hesitant. I don't like speaking in absolutes, but I think we can say this. Would y'all agree that resistance training is really the most beneficial form of exercise? And that's coming from almost just an entirely trying to remain as objective as possible, because the benefits in terms of, just like you said, your metabolic rate, your functional capacity, the preventing osteoporosis, like those are not necessarily able to be found by anything else, any other type of exercise.
Right. I would say absolutely, yes. Even has cardio benefits. So, just being strong, and you want to be strong before you run. There's a lot of runners out there, and that's great and wonderful. And cardio is great to do, but it has a lot of cardio benefits too. So we can't skip over that. Don't just think of it as muscle building and, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And also, I mean, when you think about it, if we don't have enough muscle as we age and we lose function, how is that going to translate into, our cardiovascular health? Like, how are we going to be active enough to actually provide a stimulus to our heart if we can't even hardly get up off the floor, or walking is difficult for us? You know what I mean? And that's the kind of stuff that happens when you don't have enough muscle as you age. So I would assume that would have an effect, like it would have like a roundabout effect on our cardiovascular health also.
Yeah, it's all going to cycle together, and then you get into that just self-perpetuating loop where you're inactive and you don't move around, so it just kind of gets worse and worse, and then it just cycles together. You mentioned getting up off the floor. It's funny because that was oftentimes one of the main training focuses I had with the older population in the beginning, because we'd get them on the floor and they could not get back up. And I'm like, this is a huge problem. And the good thing is, no matter what age you are, you're going to get stronger, and you're going to put on a little bit of muscle. You're going to have to work a lot harder for a lot less, but if you're detrained, you're going to be able to put on muscle relatively easily.
Yeah, that's the great news. I mean, even as we get older, we still have the capacity to put on muscle. And I see, I'm sure, Emily, you've seen it, like women in later years put on a substantial amount of muscle. It's not impossible, but the sooner we do it, the better. We don't want to wait.
Yeah, that's the thing. I had a 50-year-old cardiologist tell me the other day. No, she wasn't 50-year-old, excuse me. She told me the other day that it was important to start strength training at the age of 50. And I'm thinking, what about all the muscle that could be built before 50? I'm just like,
you got to build your bank account. That's the way I look at it. And I'm in this weird spot where I'm transitioning away from being more bodybuilding focused, but I think it's still an incredibly beneficial approach for people, because provided you're doing it in the correct way with modulating volume, and you're doing compound lifts, so there's a lot that goes into doing it correctly. But again, it comes down to the basics. However, I think that bodybuilding should be, and I think it probably will be, a little bit more open to a larger demographic in the future, because it's the most direct way to add muscle mass. And if we're trying to kick the sarcopenia can down the road as far as we possibly can, do it now, build muscle now while it's relatively easy. Best case scenario, you started during puberty, so you just leapfrog over people 10 years down the road. But that's very interesting that we're all kind of converging on one idea that, again, it comes down to the basics, and also it doesn't really matter what age you are, like those basics still apply. Those principles still absolutely apply. The very last question, the one that we ask everybody on our show: how do you feel that your industry can improve overall?
I was thinking about this question, and I think one of the ways it could improve is having more education around scope of practice for, personal trainers and nutrition coaches, because there's a lot of people crossing that line, like out of scope of practice, like saying that they can, heal your hormones and doing all these, things that just aren't possible. Like we can't, a lot of doctors don't even understand menopause. As a nutrition coach, I certainly don't know how to fix your hormones, so I think scope of practice, more education around scope of practice is something that's needed. And I think less emphasis on like fitness being a certain look, and more emphasis on like less emphasis on weight loss, and like I said, a certain look, more emphasis on like health, and redefining health as more than just a look. Because I think, when you think about what fitness is, what most people think fitness is, like they have this image come to mind of a young woman, you know, or a young man, and they have a certain body type and they look a certain way. And I think people who are very far from that standard of fitness, like there's this huge barrier between where they are and where they think fitness is, and it just creates this barrier. They're just thinking in their head like, that's I can't be that, because that's what they think fitness is. Like they're so far removed from what health and fitness like actually is, which isn't that it creates a barrier and prevents us from reaching the people that we really need to reach. You know, we're not really, I feel like it's preventing us from reaching the people that we want to reach, and they need our services more than anyone.
It's harmful to the overwhelming majority of people because those ideal fitness model types are far more rare. We're working with the average people, like they aren't having a 6 to 8 pack year round. They're not lifting weights every single day. Like it's the average people that we are meant to serve. But I think we get into this kind of competitive environment to where we're trying to keep up with and also one up the other professionals. And then we kind of just get into this zone where we don't even care about the people that we're actually meant to serve anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's a big turnoff too when women, especially our age, see abs of steel like all over their Instagram feeds and everything, because it's like it's not even attainable in our heads. Like, why would we, you know, listen to what this person has to say? Because obviously it becomes really easy for them. So just leading by example and showing, you know, what real women can do. The average woman, I mean, yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's not like there's this hierarchy. Like you can go through periods of time when you are incredibly in shape, and guess what? You're still that same person when you fall a little bit out of shape. But that's personally, like I always said for a long time as a trainer that I stayed in as good a shape as possible. Some of that was just my own ego, but also I thought that it was important to training to people. And I did have people that would come and want to work with me because they thought that I had a good physique, but that was few and far between. Again, more often than not, it was some middle-aged mom that needed help, and they'd gone to 10 trainers before then, and they just continued getting burned. And every few months, they work up the courage to come and try to get some help again. So I quickly found that those were the more important relationships, anyways. Those were the more important standards to care about, anyways. All right, guys. It was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I think if you're listening to this, whether you're a female yourself and you're going to experience some of these, I don't want to say issues because they're not necessarily issues so much as experiences, you can definitely pull some beneficial information from this. Or like if you're someone like myself who's worked with this population and will continue to work with this population in the future, considering these things is very, very, very important. I think considering the vast degree of individualization that needs to occur regardless of the population is very, very good first step. I'm super happy to be able to talk to people like y'all that give us a little bit better perception of how to work with different populations.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important. And don't be shy about weight training, because that's what we need to do. That is what we need to get started on.